Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Wire. And today I am coming to you from beautiful Alice Springs. How lucky am I to be here in Alice Springs at this time of year? I want to acknowledge that I'm on beautiful Aranda country here and to acknowledge their elders, past, present, emerging, for they are the keepers of knowledge, and to acknowledge their deep connection with the land. And I was going to say waters. There's no waters in the Todd River at the moment, but there are waters across other parts of this beautiful Central Australia. So to acknowledge that connection and to have you take a minute to acknowledge your relationship with the country and with the traditional custodians of the people of your lands, wherever you are joining us from today. A special hello to Lisa there and a special hello to Daniela there. Thanks for being live. Here comes Karen.
Thank you.
Now, today we are talking about the rules of evidence. Now, doesn't that sound so very official? But let me tell you, if you are an auditor or if you are the person in your organisation who is helping to bring together evidence for an assessment, a review, a compliance audit, an accreditation audit, whatever it is that you're working on there, you want to be concerned with the rules around the evidence, right? Because as assessors and auditors, there are certain rules that we have to follow when we're reviewing your evidence in support of your self-assessment, which is your view of how you meet all of those indicators. So just to say hello, Karen, nice to have you here. Now, Australian Service Excellence Standards, there are 100 indicators across those standards. So there's 100 boxes that you and us, your assessor, we have to tick because you need to get 100% to get your gold star. So this little workshop, this little webinar today is going to help you to focus on how to be really effective and really efficient in that evidence gathering. And I will also be sharing with you, as well as unpacking the rules of evidence there, I'll also be sharing with you some things that we see. I'm trying to be polite here. Some things that we see that are not very helpful for the assessment process. Do you like that? I nearly said shockers. I was going to say, sometimes we see some shockers. But that's because, I'm going to take, 100% responsibility for that and say, I think that's because we haven't set you up well with the information that you need about what is the very best evidence. Okay. So today we're going to talk about all the things you can do to make sure that you are telling your story in the most clear way, because that's what your assessor wants. They want to understand what you're doing and how you're meeting this requirement in the most sort of, succinct way possible. We want to be able to get it straight away. We don't want to have to ask lots of questions and dig. That's not our approach. So we want to support you to be able to tell that story with your evidence. All righty. Now, this is not the first time we've spoken about this. We talk about it many times because it is such an important part of the assessment, isn't it? The whole evidence bit, right? It's kind of the backbone of the assessment, isn't it? But I wanted to let the viewers know that there is also in our library of resources and all of our webinar recordings, there is a session called How to Present Your Evidence. All right. So it's a little bit different. That is a session about when you've got it all together, what's the best way to sort of present it all to your assessor? So it talks about the portal and it talks about ways that you write the story, all of that there. So I'm just going to mute Kerry just because it sounds like she's got, thanks, Kerry. And that is called Session 36, and that is from the 24th of October last year. If you wanted to have a look at some more things about how to present your evidence, that would be a good one for you. And you'll find that in that first section called Achieving Accreditation when you go into our library. All righty. And the other one that we did was way back in April of 2021. And that's session number 19. It's in the same section called Achieving Accreditation, and it's called Telling Your Story. All right. So there's two other resources there. If you're hot on how am I going to pull my evidence together, I want to do it all the proper way, those two really good sessions for you. Hello, Kerry. Nice to see you there. Very nice to have you here. Give us, that's all right. You can wave and you can be eating your lunch. You can turn your camera on or off, whatever you prefer to do. All right. But lots of people do catch up on this information when they can in their organisations. So that's the reason we're recording it. All right, let's go. I want to put something into the chat for you, people who are joining me here today. It's just a little PDF of some slides that might be helpful if you want to take some of this information back to your team. For everyone else who's watching, you'll find it in the list of resources in the library, right? So don't worry, you're not missing out. Proof. Evidence, another word for evidence is proof, right? So we're looking for proof. What are we looking for proof of? Have you think, what do you think we're looking for proof of? We are looking for proof of your compliance with all those indicators. And what we need to see is enough evidence to prove that there is a consistent practice in place. You know, that it's not just, oh, there's a one-off document. Here's a document and it was filled in once 2 years ago. Nope. Right? So we need to see maybe 2 completed examples. And we need to verify that by asking someone a question in an interview. See that? That will give us the proof we're looking for. So we're looking for pattern of performance. That's a term you'll hear auditors use. And we can't really get a pattern of performance or a pattern of consistency unless we see enough evidence. So we're going to talk today about how much is enough. All right? And we'll also be talking about what is the best form of evidence? Like, what's the strongest form of evidence when it comes to assessing? You know, for me, what it is? The strongest form of evidence is seeing someone do something. So I'm on an assessment at the moment. I'm working in Alice Springs with a very large Aboriginal service at the moment. They're incredible. And I have just been sitting with their HR officer. She's quite new, actually. And I've asked her to show me around their HR system, which is all electronic and Employment Hero. And so seeing her being able to drive that, seeing her being able to find all the things that I've asked her to show me, you know, is really the best evidence that she knows how to use this system and this system is working for the organisation. You see that? So that's really strong evidence, isn't it? So one thing you can do for us, which is super helpful when it comes to evidence, is tell us before we come the sorts of things that you want to show us on site. All right? Like list the systems that you have. Employment Hero, that's one that this organisation has. They also have, finance system. So they'll show us that. They also have a complaints management system that's all online. And so they're going to show us that. You know, those sorts of things we will view when we come to your service, but we want to know that in advance because organisations are moving to a very, very digital kind of, management systems for their corporate business anyway, right? So we know that we need to spend more time looking at those things when we're on site than we possibly did in the past. So we need to carve out some time in the schedule for that. So it's really important that you tell us, you'll see this on site, right? You just tell us that and we'll make the time to do that. So that's one helpful tip. Tell us ahead of time the systems, the registers, the sensitive information that you'd really rather us view on site. All right, helpful tip number 1, take that. All right, I might just share my screen with you in a moment and we'll run through those rules of evidence. Questions, comments can come at any time, by the way, not from the viewers, you're on your own. But the people who are live in here with me, you can ask any questions you like. Let me get this up. Okay. All right. What are we looking for? We are looking for objective evidence. So this is different from the kind that someone would say, "Oh yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do that. We're good at that. We're great at that. Oh my goodness, you should see us go when it comes to that." Okay, that's subjective evidence. So objective evidence is the kind of evidence that kind of stands on its own. All right. We need to see proof that there's control over the activity being audited. Now, what we mean by that is, and I'll give you a really good example, actually. Diversity is a really great example of this. There's a requirement in the standards that that you be, what is it? That you have a plan for having a diverse workplace, and that you have measures and you monitor your performance in relation to diversity, right? So you've got some data and some stats around workplace diversity. And sometimes the way that people respond to that is to say, "Oh yeah, well, we've got a diverse team. We've got one of those, we've got one of those. I think we've got a couple of those, and I think she might be one of those." That's not really control over the activity of, diversity and inclusion, is it? That you happened to end up with a team that looks a little bit different. So it would be more along the lines of having some diversity targets, or having diversity in your workforce plan, or, doing some things like capturing some data around the diversity of your team. Yeah, you would also have a diversity and inclusion policy and procedure. Yeah, those sorts of things, not just, "Oh yeah, we happen to have a diverse team." That the policies and procedures are implemented consistently. So if you have a number of people and you have a number of sites, we want to see that the procedures, or the way that you expect people to do things, happens like that from site to site, particularly when it comes to important things like work health and safety. Mm-hmm. We need you to show us that you're compliant with the relevant standards. So we do need to have evidence which is a very good match to what the indicator is asking for. There's an indicator in there that says, "Do you have a strategic plan that's been developed in consultation with key stakeholders?" And so what we need to see there, you could probably guess what it is we need to see there. We need to see a current strategic plan, and we need to see a list of the people who participated in developing it. You see that? But you'd be surprised the range of evidence that we do get for that. We need to see that you're compliant with relevant legislation and lots of the must-dos in the funding agreements. So we'll often have a look at funding agreements and have a look at any targets, KPIs, reporting requirements in there to make sure that you are complying with those. So you might want to show us that on site. You might want to show us how you've submitted your last report or gotten some feedback from your funders. We'll have a look at your policies and procedures to make sure that they are up to date and compliant with current legislation, and that planned outcomes are being achieved. So we will have a look at your strategic plan, and again, we'll have a look at your funding agreements to see that, that you're sticking with your core business, and that you are achieving those outcomes that you've set for yourself or your funder has set for you, and that, that you're communicating those to the people, to the stakeholders who need to know. So that's, in general terms, that's a sort of, some parameters or principles around the evidence that we're looking for. Moving along. Sorry. There's lots of different types of evidence. This is a good way to categorise them, but don't get stuck on this. I've actually got a better slide coming up that gives you some more sort of relevant examples to your context, but this is a bit sort of, auditor speak here. But there's ways that we can gather the proof that we need, and that is through documentary evidence, through a lot of digital evidence. So we come and have a look at those live registers, for example, client databases, for example. We can make observations, which we do when we walk around your site. We look at a lot of things to do with safety, quality, client journey. And we can have a look at things like artifacts and symbols, that's an interesting one, isn't it? But I'm often having a look around at what's on the walls. You wouldn't believe what's on the walls in this room that I'm in today. There's some incredible artwork, and there's even a lot of things in language for the directors, which is an Anangal board of women from the MPY lands here in the centre of Australia. And so there's a lot of very technical governance terms that have been interpreted into their language, into Pitjantjatjara. So, that's the sort of thing that I would see, as evidence. I love all of that, actually. It's really great to learn like that. So let's get on to this next slide here, which is here you'll be able to see, in your organisation, you'll be able to see all these types of things. So don't think that evidence is about, oh, we've got to have a policy for that, we've got to have a procedure for that. There's lots of different ways that you can present your evidence, your documentary evidence. So, it could be through showing us registers live when we arrive. It could be some audit results or evaluations that are being done. It can be agreements, surveys. You might want to show us some training sort of PowerPoints that you've done, even screenshots, media clips, photos, all sorts of ways. One thing we really do love when it comes to presenting evidence is my favourite. Some of my fellow assessors might say, oh, don't waste my time with that. But this is one of my favourites, is when a little team of people in your organisation get together and they make a presentation about something they're particularly proud of, or an improvement, or a new program that's really innovative and getting some fabulous outcomes. So that's another really great way to present evidence. So, yeah, I really do enjoy those opportunities to hear about real examples in the organisation. Mm. Does anyone in the room who's been through accreditation want to add anything to this list here? The sorts of things that you might put up. Oh, a website. That's another really great source of information. The website. Another organisation we worked with a little while ago, they gave us access to their Teams channels. So we could see all the sort of, discussion and yarning they've been doing about quality and continuous improvement. So they had an improvement channel in their Teams, and they showed us, they gave us access to that, showed us all the things that they'd been talking about and how improvements get implemented. That was a good one.
Can I ask, Marie, do you look at social media?
Yeah. Yeah. We look at that like we look at a website. If we get access to social media like Facebook, Instagram, we'll go through and have a look at the sorts of things that are getting posted on there, and the sorts of discussions that are being had with the community or with clients. Yeah. Yeah. We love that. It's become such a major form of communication. So yes, it is. It's a really good way to show us. I mean, even if there's a whole heap of, I don't know, even if there's a culture of complaint, which I work mostly with our Aboriginal clients, and I know the community can sometimes get on there and really harass the organisation and, why aren't you doing this and you're not doing that? And, they're really poking the stick. But just to see that open and transparent communication, that two-way, we sometimes see that managed really well on social media. Yeah. Particularly for young people. Young people like to engage that way with their service. That's a good one. What else do you think could be a way for you to present your evidence? I'm trying to think of some of the different ones I've seen. I sometimes get invited to go and sit in groups. Just the start of the group, if it's sensitive, like men's groups, I've been invited to sit in men's groups, but only for the first bit, or healing type of groups, or, those kinds of groups. Can just come and sit and watch for a bit. been part of some art groups where, women coming together and yarning, and we've been able to be part of that. That's a great way to present evidence. Now, the rules. Here we go, with the pointy end now. We need to see enough evidence. So sufficiency is one of the rules. So sufficiency, enough evidence. There's a rule of 3 here, right? If you don't remember anything else about what we've talked about today, please remember this. 3, 3, 3. Generally, 3 is enough to give us that pattern of performance. And we're talking about documentary evidence here, all right? So 3 pieces of documentary evidence per indicator is probably enough. If you're a very small organisation, probably 2 is going to be enough. Don't forget, we're also going to be talking to people. We're also going to be having a look around. So, we're getting evidence across a range of sort of opportunities, but when it comes to your documents, 3, 3, 3, 3. The evidence that you put up for us, you present to us, validity means relevant, means it has to be a good match to the indicator. All right, don't just think, oh, we don't have anything for that. What could we put up? Just put nothing up. If you don't have anything, just put nothing up. Because we look at it and we go, how is this? What is the story behind this evidence here? We can't really work it out. We'll just disregard it. So we'd really rather you put up the very best example. All right. So there is an indicator that says the organisation has a current risk plan, risk policy, and review cycle for risk. So if you want to put up your best 3, what I would put up is your risk management policy and your risk register. That's all you need. So you only need 2 there, you see. But in this game, I'm going to say less is more, but only if it's, the very, very relevant examples. And if you don't think we're going to be able to work it out, then maybe putting a note to go with that to explain how that fits would be really helpful. Currency. So your evidence that you put up, your documentary evidence needs to be current. So it needs to be recent enough to confirm that that practice is still in place. And currency also refers to the documents, the dates on documents. We tend to not look at anything that you put up that's more than 3 years old. There's that rule of 3 again. 3 years old. All right. So good practice would say that all your documents should be reviewed within that 3-year period, don't you think? Yeah. I mean, there'll be some things that won't change over the 3-year period. A constitution's a great example. So constitutions are generally reviewed and updated, maybe every 5 years. So that's an exception to that rule. But generally there's a rule of 3 years. Okay. So if you give us board meeting minutes from 3 years ago, I'd be saying, can we have a set from last month? Yeah. Authentic. This means it's really yours. It's really been approved. It's been ratified. For example, I've just finished looking at lots of HR documents. And when I see documents that are signed, that's when I know that it's the real deal. All right. So I want to see a signed code of conduct. I want to see a signed confidentiality agreement, signed contracts, signed performance appraisals, right? So there's evidence that it is real. There's been many times when we've gone to an organisation to review policies, procedures, tools, templates, things like that, and there's been the name of another organisation on the footer. Right? So that speaks to me about authenticity there. It's like, oh, did you just pull this over and just put your name on it? Or, yeah, so sometimes we read policies and procedures and we know that they're not about this organisation because we can read in the procedure the context is very different. You see? Recently, I reviewed some policies and procedures for an organisation, and what they do is settlement services, and they had a whole heap of clinical stuff in their work health and safety manual, and I thought, oh, that's a bit wacky. And so I asked about it, and yeah, they hadn't quite done the review properly. So I didn't think that was very authentic, you know? Yeah, so authenticity is an important thing around evidence as well. So where things are dated and signed, that tells us they're authentic, where they've got logos and, you know, when the information is really relevant to the work of the organisation, that speaks to authenticity. The next thing here is that the evidence can be corroborated. So we sometimes use the term triangulation here as auditors. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find proof that this that you meet this requirement, and we're trying to corroborate that in a couple of different ways. So you'll give us a document, we'll also talk to a staff member, and we'll also have a look around. You see that? It's triangulated, 1, 2, 3, three ways to corroborate compliance with that indicator. All right, so if this assessment were just based on policies and procedures, most organisations would get 100%. But it's actually based on policies and procedures being fully implemented, isn't it? And that's where it's harder for organisations to demonstrate that with their evidence. The evidence sort of needs to be part of a demonstrated system of work. So if, for example, the risk management standard says, let's say, the risk management standard says that the team are, the organisation communicates about the risk management system to the team. It wouldn't work if we only got evidence of one team doing a day of risk management training. Do you see what I mean? It wouldn't sort of tell us that there's a system around everybody knowing what they need to know. So the evidence needs to tell the story of, look, this is fairly consistent across our organisation. So if we could see the training register and it showed us that every person did that risk management training, that's a better piece of evidence, isn't it? Than one person's risk management training certificate. See the difference? That sometimes we just get one certificate and we obviously have to follow up and say, hey, did everybody do this training? Yeah. And sustainable. So the evidence shows that the practice is not reliant on the skills of one particular person or a bit of a fad. It is actually part of a, sustainable practice. Right. So that sort of evidence could be things like, that's a good example of it, demonstrating sustainability. That there is let's just say that there is a environmental sustainability policy that all the people participate in. And the environmental sustainability policy is one that would actually work in the context of that environment. So I'm here in Alice Springs, for example, where if this organisation said to me, oh yeah, we have a recycling policy, I would say, all right, where are you recycling all your stuff to? Because it's very, very difficult here in the centre, and it's more difficult out on the lands where this organisation works. So I would say if you've got a recycling policy, that's probably relying on one person picking up the plastic and bringing it back into town and then paying money to have that actually recycled because there isn't a proper recycling system here. So, it needs to be something that shows that the practice is consistently implemented across the whole organisation and that it would still be there. If we come back in 3 years' time, that it could be something that would be still would be going. Yeah, rather than just a trial. Yeah. So there you go, everyone. There are the rules of evidence for auditing. I know that's riveting, isn't it? But the ones I want you to really focus on are sufficiency, currency, and validity. All right, I want you to find the best match. I want you to find the most current, and I want there to be enough for us to be able to make a really good judgment about your compliance with that indicator. So some more helpful tips. I've got a couple more here for you. Notes. Now, if you're presenting your evidence on the BNG portal, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that. All right, so that's an electronic system where you can put your evidence in, you can do your self-assessment in one place. There's a place in there to put some notes. So you answer a question, do you do this? Yes, we do. Here's our 3 pieces of evidence. And then there's a box that says, do you want to say anything else about this? The correct answer is yes, we do. We do want to say something else about this. I'm just admitting Carol here. If you can get the information about. Hello, Carol. Good to have you here. We're talking about the rules of evidence. I'm sharing some helpful tips with people. And I'm just apologising to my SA friends that we didn't make it clear in the initial email that it was Australian Eastern Standard Time that we were working to. And I knew there'd be some people joining us halfway through. It's all right. Good to see you, Carol.
Yeah, going to Marie now. Like, I'll send you that. I'll send you this link. Sorry, Marie.
Okay, doesn't matter. It's all good. I'm just going to mute you so that we can keep on going and you can relax. All right, so notes. Give us some notes. Give us some context. If you're not working in the portal, in a moment, I'm going to show you some ways that you can give us some notes in the workbook, or you can create a template where you can give us some notes. But that context is so helpful. Now, you don't have to, like the systems don't say you have to, but gee, I tell you, if you want to tell your story, that's a really great way to help us to hear your story, to see your story. So that's another helpful tip. I talked before, my other tip was make sure you tell us in advance the things you want us to view on site, because otherwise we'll be looking for those things, in your evidence. So tell us if you want us to view that on site. That'll be things like anything sensitive. Don't put that in the portal. No. Anything like registers and live systems, we'll look at those on site. So don't try and put those things near your portal or your evidence workbook, however you're working. These are things that are not helpful. Now, I don't usually like to work on the negative side of the ledger, but recently we've had some trials of assessments where it's been the evidence that's really let people down. And I don't want you to be letting yourselves down at that stage, because your evidence is generally going to be given to your assessor 3 or 4 weeks out from the assessment. And that's when they're going to start giving you feedback about the evidence that you've put up. They can do it way earlier than that. Like, you can give us access anytime to your evidence and we can give you feedback. We love to do that. We love to give you feedback to say, oh, that's looking really good. That's currency, there's sufficiency, that's great quality evidence. It's really valid and relevant to the standards. Keep going. So do give us a chance to do that if you can. But otherwise, we're going to ask for your evidence 3 to 4 weeks out from the assessment, because we do it all before we come. We look at it all before we come. And the reason is because it gives us great information about your organisation, but also it helps us to be very targeted in the questions that we want to ask and the things that we want to look at when we come on site. Okay? Because we want it to be really efficient and effective, this assessment. So these are some things that are not helpful. Do not put these up. Do not present these to us. Blank templates. Now, that's not helpful, is it? You can think, well, we can see that you have a template for that, but really, what would we rather see than a blank template? What would be? Thinking about the rules of evidence. What is it? You can type it. You can say it. Come on.
How about a de-identified document?
Completed template. If it's sensitive, then redact it. Okay? Perfect. Perfect. All right. So sometimes we get blank evaluation forms. We go, all right, give us a completed evaluation form. Okay? So blank templates generally not helpful. Old documents. If we see anything with a date on it that's more than 3 years old, we're likely, unless it's a constitution, we're likely to go, nah, too old. So when you're putting your evidence up, mate, if you think it's a more recent document, or if it needs just a quick check over, and then change the date. Even just give it a slight version change. So you don't have to go from version 2 to version 3. You could go to version 2.1 and say, look, we had a look at this and we made some brief changes. But, generally we won't look at old documents. Too much, right? You might think, oh, look at us, we're so good. We haven't just got 3 pieces of information for this. We're going to give them access to our whole share drive. No, because if you give us access to your whole share drive, then we have to do the work to find your story. And we might not get it right because you know what? We're sitting there with a headache and we're going, oh, this is so hard. Why is this so hard? So we really love it when you say, have a look at these. So in some cases, too much could be 8 or 9 pieces of evidence. It won't be required. I cannot think of an indicator where that many pieces of evidence would be required, no matter your size. So think about that, right? We've already got 100 indicators, and I'm already saying about 2 to 3, so we're up to 300 pieces of evidence, and I give myself and my assessors about half a day to do the document review. Right, so have pity on our souls and do your best to just give us the minimum that you could give us to tell your story. Wacky naming conventions or no naming conventions. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Now, what we really love is dates on documents. So if this is the, risk register and it was last reviewed in April last year, put the date on it. But what we also love is to have an obvious naming convention. Now, if you've got a really good, document management system, which some do and some don't, but that's all right. But, if you have, then you'll have a fairly consistent kind of naming convention. I think when we went to Lisa's organisation there, they've got POL for policy and FOR for form, or, they've got T for template, like it's easy for us to see what that document is. But some naming conventions have just abbreviations in them. Like this is the CFSS, KPI report for the MD. I'm like, wow. I mean, I can read that, but not everybody can read all of the abbreviations. You don't have to do this, but recently we went to an organisation where they gave us a list of abbreviations and jargon that was pretty specific to them. And I just thought that was amazing. It was really, really helpful to know what all that meant. And sensitive. Don't put sensitive things up for us to have a look at. You don't need to do that. If there are sensitive things, we'd rather you get consent for us to look at those on site, and we would rather sit next to you and have a look at them. Yeah, don't print things out. There's no need for any of that. We should be working wholly electronically. So please don't feel the need. I did go to an assessment once and they had every piece of evidence printed out on a massive table in the middle of the room. Can you imagine? And I felt compelled to kind of, occasionally flick through it when they came into the room. But wow, I just walked in there and went, oh, I think I can hear the trees screaming. But I felt like we're starting off on a footing which is overwhelming. Like it's already overwhelming for the people who've had to prepare that, and now for us who, wow. So don't do that. What are your questions? That's the end of my little list of tips, do's and don'ts. What are your questions? Have I been helpful?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Karen?
How soon is too soon to start? You mentioned the so I guess we're in the process of signing our contract with you, but I guess you're tell us about the portal, but how soon, I mean, we're not due till September 2026. How soon is too soon to start collating evidence?
No, I think, look, what you should give yourself the most time to do, and people who've been through accreditation here, like Carol and Lisa, give yourself the most time to do the self-assessment. Do that as early as you can, even if it's like a quick tick and flick, because what you want to do as early as possible is identify where your improvement opportunities are. So if you let's say you do your self-assessment and you think, oh, look, we're 65% there, but we've got 35% to go to fix up or to update. You want plenty of time to do that. You don't want to be putting people under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But lately, and it's a little bit the reason for this yarn today, it's been really up to the line. Like with a lot of organisations, and I think that's an indicator that there's just a lot going on in our sector, and we're super flexible, and but we do want to say, look, if there's any way that we can help you to make a good start early, get on with it. We'll help you. We'll be there for you. We've got tools, templates, ways to engage lots of people in the organisation, and we want to help you with that. We don't want that stress of everybody like panicking 2 weeks before because the evidence is not going to be ready. So that's something we've experienced a bit of lately, which is not nice.
One more observation is we've been accredited a couple of times, and it's because of the pandemic. Both of those times were done remotely, so I'm really excited that we'll have someone on site. One of the things the feedback we got last time was that we had too many policies, and yet there was a requirement to add new ones to be able to cover off some of the the indicators. So that's interesting. And we really probably haven't reduced them. Yeah.
Well, you see, what some organisations do when they get into service excellence is they start to use it as a bit of their policy framework. You don't have to, but it is a good framework for your policies and procedures. And look, our advice is when it comes to documents, you just want to make sure you're covering off on the legislation, because policies and procedures guide compliant work practice. That's their purpose. So you just want to make sure you've got coverage on the things that people must do. Now, if there's things that you want people to do because it's, it's about great service delivery or other, they can be in frameworks, they can be in flow charts, SOPs, but what we're looking for is that you've got coverage on the legislation.
Yeah.
So, we go high level with that, go high level on work health and safety, for example, and then have some service delivery, safety practices that you've documented in a work instruction or a workflow or something like that. Yeah. But yes, a lot of organisations, their policies and procedures have evolved over many, many years, and they've never done that work to stop and go, right, let's have a framework. All right, so we can push some of these high-level ones up to the corporate end of the business.
Yeah.
And then we can have some more service delivery policies underneath that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Marie. Just a question. So we are going to be starting our process in September this year. So we have been diligently popping things into the portal. This is Laura. We've been popping things into the portal, never done it before, got no idea because ours was zero, empty. Do we contact Bronwyn if we would like to do some early work to have a look to see if we're tracking in the right direction, or do we go through to you?
Yeah, either.
Okay.
It depends on, I'm here for you. If I'm on an assessment, Ron will do it. If she's on assessment, I'll do it. Okay. So what was encourage you to do is to let B&G know that you want to give us access and ask us to go in there, have a look and give you feedback anytime. We want to do that. That's a real key to success.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I think your assessment's in September.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so you won't be starting in September yet.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
No, I've already started.
Good.
Another line.
Yes, good. Karen.
Another question is, we used Quip in the past and they provided us with a portal. Are you going to do that, or because I'm not understanding what B&G is? Is it around NDIS or
No, B&G. So when you were working with QIP, they had their own tool. And so you did your self-assessment there, you uploaded your evidence.
Yeah.
So there is a tool that's available to every organisation in Australia, really. It's called the B&G SPP. We call it the portal. So when we talk about the portal, that's what we mean. There is a subscription. So it's not through us. It's actually through that company. Many organisations use it and find it super easy and the best way to get it all together. But you don't have to use that. I'm just about to show you another way that you can do it. Right? Sure. You don't have to take that option up, but organisations generally have, because some sectors are being given discounts and things like that. So we can talk about whether that's going to be good for you. But I want to just share my screen here with you and give you a couple of examples of the other ways that people do this. Let's get that open. So this that I'm going to show you all now is called the ASES workbook. And this is a really great way to present your evidence. Before the portal came along, this is what everybody used, and it's still good for us. So this is a workbook. The good thing about this is you can take out certain sections and give it to certain people to complete. All right, so here's an example of how you would complete this. This is really the best way to complete this if you're not using the portal. So it's got all the indicators in it, and you get to indicate. Sorry, I'm missing something there. Nope. You get to give yourself a rating. So fully in place, partially in place, not in place is the rating here. And then this is the way that you might give us some notes, and you would link your evidence back to your share drive, and then you would give us access to your share drive. All right, so I've just filled that one in there to give you a bit of an example. All right, so that's one way. That's called the workbook. So if you tell us we're not going to work in the portal, then we would send you this workbook. The other way that organisations have done, I've got a sample here for you of a really good example of presenting your evidence if you're not using the portal. And I'm going to be putting this into the resources for this little webinar. I've redacted this, I think, effectively, so I'll, apologise in advance if I haven't quite managed it. So this is what the organisation has given us. So for each of the standards, so this is what they've done for the strategic planning standard. All right, so they've put at the top here the little bit of information about the standard, and then they've gone down here. On the left here is that requirement. Here is the evidence. So there's the notes that they wanted to give us. Is that big enough for people to read? And then they've listed their documentary evidence. Now, I want to say to you that for that first indicator, that is a really good example of sufficiency and validity. All right, so the role and values of the organisation are clearly identified and communicated. So it's in our strategic plan, it's in our website, we put it on our posters, and it's in the board's code of conduct. All right, so there's all the indicators there. I'll move down the page a bit so you can continue to have a read. And again, that looks current, sufficient, valid. So here's a strategic plan development and review procedure. Here's our environmental scan that we did as part of our planning. And here's our strategic planning day report.
So they're all linked to the SharePoint.
Yep. They're all linked to the share drive. And then they organise for us to have access to their share drive. All right. So that's the document they've done for that first standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your preference to work all this?
I don't have any preference at all, as long as we can easily get to open the documents.
Mm.
So recently we have had some challenges with getting into people's share drives because there's all these levels of authentication, which, that's good, but sometimes keeps outsiders out. So we do need that to be efficient. So we will ask you to have an IT person ready to make sure that we can get access on the day that you say, here's our evidence. We want to make sure that we can actually get in. Mm. So that's the only little drama with that one. But, people love the portal, but it is at a cost. And it's very easy for you to show us your story, with any of those other two examples there. Yeah. Rightio. If there aren't any more questions, we might stop the recording there. I want to thank all the VIPs that decided to be in the room today. I really appreciate that. Give them a wave, everyone. Give the viewers a wave. Give them a good luck wave. Do your best, everyone. We're here for you. And so are your colleagues every month here on The Wire if you want to join us. Reach out.